How do we create emotion in our fiction? This is something that I've thought about a lot because it's actually something that doesn't come very naturally to me. It's something I have to work a bit harder at than, say, dialogue or description. So it's something that I've really tried to consider over the years and tried to pinpoint so that the next time I have to write a particularly emotional scene, it doesn't take me so long to get there. Now, one thing that could contribute towards an emotional story or an emotional scene is beautiful language. That's always going to help enhance any kind of message. But on the other hand, we can definitely imagine a beautiful passage of text that isn't particularly emotional, it's just beautiful. So it's not just that creates an emotional scene. Is it a big event, like someone dying? Is that what creates emotion? Well, we can definitely imagine and probably have seen and witnessed stories where someone dies and we just don't care for whatever reason. Maybe they're a minor character, maybe they're a main character, but for whatever reason we just don't feel anything when they die. How do we make the audience feel something? It's a really tricky thing to do, but I believe, in my opinion, for me, I've reduced it to one word, and that word is contrast. Now, why do I say that? Well, when you think about it, everything that we feel as a human, we feel because of contrast. We maybe didn't realise how warm we were until we suddenly got hit by a cold draft. Maybe we didn't realise how happy we actually were until we suddenly got depressed. Maybe there was a humming in the room, but we didn't realise there was a humming in the room until the hum stopped. And then we kind of realised, oh, there was a hum just then, and I didn't even realise there was one. It's not until there's a contrast that we feel something. So if you think about, say, a really mean character, if that mean character suddenly does something really kind and noble, that can make us feel something because it's a contrast. The character has changed in some way, and because it's out of the ordinary, it makes us feel something. You could completely flip that on its head and have a character who's normally really kind and really noble do something quite evil and dishonourable. And just saying that, I can kind of start to feel something because the idea of this really kind person doing something bad, because of the contrast, does kind of make you feel something. And then I was thinking about the most emotional scene that I've ever written, in my opinion, which is a book that I'm trying to get traditionally published, which I wrote in 2020. So I'll set the scene for you a little bit. So there's a married couple, a man and a woman, and the woman is called Lucy. And this married couple actually had a child who died when he was 5 years old, a boy. And since then, they've had another child, a girl, who's now coming up to roughly that age, 5 years old. And the woman, Lucy, has never quite been able to bond with this daughter. In fact, she almost doesn't even feel like she is really her daughter because she just can't open herself up. She had the son who died, and now she just can't open herself up to the point where she feels like she can love again. And she never quite gets close to this daughter, to the point where she almost just feels like a stranger to her. Until one day, the house catches fire. And a house catching fire could just inherently be quite an emotional scene anyway. But I think on its own, a house catching fire isn't necessarily emotional. But the emotional part comes from the fact that as soon as this house catches fire and Lucy realises that her daughter that she's never bonded with is in trouble and she's trapped in a room that's covered by fallen rafters and flames, she goes into a maternal mode and she suddenly screams and she wants to protect this child more than anything, more than she ever has. For the first time in her life, she really feels an attachment to this child and she knows that she has to rescue the child. And through the act of trying to save the child, she succeeds but dies herself in the fire. I think it is a really emotional scene, and I think for me, it all stems from that contrast. If Lucy had been a really good mother throughout the whole story and then saved the child, it wouldn't be so much of an impact because we know that she's going to save the child, she's a good mother, and nothing's really changed, there's no contrast there. But the fact that she's never felt a bond, and then when it really matters, the bond kicks in, and she suddenly loves this child and wants to protect her more than anything, I think is really powerful, and it's the contrast that achieves that. We want to see our characters change and grow, even if that's a negative arc, a positive arc. We want to see them do things that they wouldn't normally do. I'm watching Scrubs at the moment on Disney Plus, and the character of Dr. Cox is actually one of my favourite fictional characters of all time, because he can be this really mean, grumpy, overbearing guy, but every now and again you'll get a little flicker of sweetness, a flicker of him being encouraging towards his interns. And every time it happens, and it does happen maybe once every couple of episodes, it does make me feel something, because it's such a great contrast. We're not used to seeing this character act this way, and you're kind of always craving it. You want to see him be nice, but at the same time you love it when he's not, because you know that there's that opportunity there for the contrast. There's a great video by K.M. Weiland where she digs into this a little bit, and she mentions Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, where in the midst of this really horrific battle scene, Hugo writes this: "There were corpses here and there, and pools of blood on the pavement. I remember a white butterfly which went and came in the street." That kind of sums it up for me. You've got this horrific battle, blood and bodies strewn everywhere, but that one contrasting detail, the white butterfly, and the fact that the character remembers this white butterfly which went and came in the street. I think that's amazing. I think you can always include some kind of contrasting detail that really draws the reader in. I was also, while we're talking about this, I've been watching a lot of videos about this old game called Earthbound for the Super Nintendo. I'm going somewhere with this, trust me. It's a really childish, colourful game, which means that when you get to the end, the horrific ending of that game is all the more horrific and scary and potent because of the fact that it was so sweet at the beginning. If the whole game had been scary, that ending might not have been anywhere near as potent. So whether you're contrasting sadness with happiness, good with evil, scariness with innocence, you can achieve the emotion you want by adding a bit of contrast of the other side of the scale. Just because you're trying to write something scary doesn't mean it all has to be scary. Just because you're trying to write something sad doesn't mean it all has to be sad. And in fact, you can make it much more sad or much more scary if you have some moments of joy in there, or some moments of innocence and pleasure in there. If it's all the same emotion, we're not going to notice it, just like we don't notice that we're warm until there's the cold breeze. I hope that helps you guys. Let me know in the comments if it does. Let me know how you like to create emotion, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.